Hello and welcome to the fourth edition of our podcast weekly news bulletin on the Gambia. From the Shepherds Broadcasting Network, I am Shiva Ravindran. In the headlines, the 59th NGO Forum on Human and People's Rights begin in the Gambia. Think Young Women Association has concluded 3 days National Intergenerational Dialogue on Gender-Based Violence and Child Protection in the Gambia. Charges against Edi Mass Jobe in the case involving officials of the Gambia National Petroleum Company has been dropped. The government of the Gambia signed a $53.46 million deal with an Indian construction firm to construct a state-of-the-art campus for the University of The Gambia. Now the news in detail. The 59th Ordinary Session of the African Commission for Human and People's Rights is underway in Banjul. The meeting started on Friday 21st October and expected to end on the 4th of November. Amongst the participants are local and international delegates from governments, civil societies and human rights groups. In her opening remark on behalf of the Vice President, Mama Fatima Singate, Gambia's Attorney General and Minister of Justice said, "The government and the people of the Gambia are delighted to host the event and challenge the Commission to protect, uphold and celebrate the rights of women across the African continent."
On behalf of His Excellency, the President of the Gambia, Sheikh Professor Dr. Alhaji Yahya AJJ Jammeh, the government and people of the Gambia, I welcome you all to this historic joint opening ceremony of the 59th session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights and the 28th Ordinary Session of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. The government and people of the Gambia are delighted to have you here today, and we are happy and delighted to host this historic joint session, and it is my fervent hope that you will have time to explore and enjoy our beautiful country, the smiling coast of Africa. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you will all recall that this year has been designated the Year of Human Rights with special focus on the rights of women. The theme for this session, Women's Rights, Our Collective Responsibility, is appropriate, as safeguarding the rights of women is a collective responsibility that all stakeholders and partners, both duty bearers and duty holders alike, must all invest in to ensure that the rights of women are protected holistically across the continent. I therefore would take this opportunity to thank the Commission for its tireless and continued work in the promotion and protection of human rights in this continent. I wish to recognize its excellent contributions and achievements in this domain. As we all know, the session of the Commission is very important. It's an important forum for all stakeholders to carry out an objective assessment of the effective implementation of our obligations under the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, within which the Commission plays a very pivotal role. This session will primarily be centered on the successes and challenges in the protection and promotion of the rights of women. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, you will agree with me that women across the African continent have come a very long way since the inception of the Banjul Charter. There have been many obstacles along the way. Some, however, have resulted in numerous milestones celebrated. We must recognize and celebrate the work of women who served as inspiration to other women and, most importantly, to younger generation in recognizing that they too can achieve success, and in the belief that women can be economic powerhouses and afford to provide and support their families. Little girls around this continent can dare to dream that one day they too can become presidents, vice presidents, ministers, heads of international institutions, etc., etc. Whilst highlighting the progress made by women in positions of power and responsibility, we must also acknowledge and salute the women who are changing the continent, not from the boardroom or the offices of international organizations, but from their farms, the petty traders who are the backbones of our commercial sectors, and also the everyday women raising their kids and tendering to their families. They are all worthy of celebration. Many times, these women are not factored in when successes are celebrated, but they play a very crucial role in the day in their homes, shape and nurture leaders of tomorrow.
That was Gambia's Justice Minister Mama Fatima Singate addressing the African Commission on Human and People's Rights Ordinary Session in Banjul. The chairperson of the African Union's Advisory Board on Corruption, Joseph Daisenga, said African women are still relegated to the background as minorities in the public policy and decision-making process in the continent, despite constituting Africa's highest demographic figure. Mr. Daisenga made these remarks at the opening of the 59th Ordinary Session on the African Commission on Humans and People's Rights in Banjul.
As many of you may know, it is my first time of attending the session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights in my capacity as the chairperson of the African Union Commission, the African Union Advisory Board on Corruption. I therefore look forward to the deliberations of this session, particularly from the perspective of socio-political and economic implications of corruption on human and women's rights in Africa. Excellencies, let me first congratulate the African Commission and the African Court on Human and People's Rights, together with the African Committee on the Rights and Welfare of the Child and the Department of Political Affairs of the African Union Commission for spearheading the declaration of 2016 as the African Year of Human Rights. I also wish to commend the government of the Republic of Rwanda for proposing the second leg of the theme of the year, namely focus on the rights of women. This commendation will not be complete without a word of congratulation to my sister, Advocate Pansy Tlakula, the chairperson, and the honorable members of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights for the admirable manner in which the 59th Ordinary Session has been organized. Excellencies, distinguished participants, it is no longer news that women, including girls, constitute more than half of Africa's population. Yet despite this demographic advantage, African women are still relegated to the background and remain a minority at the public policy and decision-making levels across the continent. The girl child, for instance, has a lower enrollment ratio as compared to the boy child in the majority of African primary schools. And women constitute a minority in both the public and private workforce across the continent. It was in the context of the above, among other things, that the African Union decided to prioritize women empowerment and development and women human rights in the past few years. The African Union theme for this year is a clarion call for all Africans and friends of our dearly beloved continent to promote and support human rights in general and the rights of women in particular.
You are listening to the podcast Weekly News Bulletins on the Gambia from SBN. I am Shira Ravindran. The Think Young Women Association has concluded 3 days National Intergenerational Dialogue on Gender-Based Violence and Child Protection in the Gambia at the Paradise Suite Hotel. The event has brought together 50 regional delegates across the country, representing both the older and younger generation. It's supported by the British Embassy through the Bilateral Partnership Fund. Participants were engaged in conversation on gender-based violence, child marriage, child protection and other related issues from Thursday 20th to Saturday 22nd October. In addressing the gathering, the British ambassador to the Gambia, Colin Crokin, said he's delighted that the British Embassy is involved in the project.
There's been references from earlier speakers about the legislation that this country passed last year and this year on FGM and child marriage. Legislation is all well and good, but if there isn't the outreach and the education and changing people's mindset, the legislation itself doesn't actually serve a purpose. So I'm delighted that we've got these groups going today from all over the country where you'll be able to discuss these things. Violence can take many shapes and forms. It's not just physical violence, there's other ways as well. And I hope that the discussions you have will be as wide-ranging as possible, beneficial to you all. And when you go back to your different parts of the country, you're able to share the experiences you've had here over the 3 days with colleagues in your towns and areas, and expand the discussion. It doesn't always have to be a formal discussion in a hotel like this. What you take away from the next 3 days will be equally important, and how you use that new knowledge and share it with your colleagues who haven't been able to make it today. So, as I say, delighted that the British Embassy is involved with this. I wish you all the very best, and I hope you have a very fruitful and challenging but rewarding sessions ahead. So, on behalf of the British Embassy, all the very best to each and every one of you. Thank you very much.
Lamin Darbo of the National Youth Council said the intergenerational dialogue is timely and important to the young people, as the plight of the women is utmost concern to all duty bearers.
I just want to appreciate and thank Think Young Women for the efforts they are putting in place for the empowerment of young women, but not only their empowerment, but ensuring that we have a stronger community of advocates against all forms of gender-based violence. This has been manifested through Think Young Women various activities in the combos and also in the rural communities, targeting young women and men who we understand are not only leaders today, but also for the future. That strategy at the level of the National Youth Council is recognized as a best practice and a model that can end violence against women in a generation. This intergenerational dialogue against gender-based violence is both timely and important for us as young people. Review national youth policy, share critical issues regarding the plight of young women in the Gambia. Again, if you look at the Women's Act and other gender-related policies in this country, the plight of young women continue to be a concern for all duty bearers. You will all recall that the African Youth Charter, which is the continental framework for youth development in Africa, recently had its 10th-year anniversary in the Gambia, called the Banjul Plus 10. This charter also speaks volume on the plight of young women in Africa, and Gambia is no exception.
That was Mr. Lamin Darbo, the Executive Director of the National Youth Council, addressing participants of the Think Young Women Intergenerational Dialogue. However, it looks like this year's December presidential election in the Gambia is exceptional, as many concerned personalities, groups and institutions are encouraging enfranchised Gambians to exercise their sovereign rights and cast their votes for their favourite candidate. Mr. Darbo, the Youth Council leader, is one of those who are advising the youth to take part in their country's decision-making process. He made this remark at the Think Young Women Intergenerational Dialogue Forum.
Before concluding, I also want to use this opportunity to basically call on us, the young ones, and our moms that are seated here today, that we recall our mind and also remind ourselves once again that 2016 is an election year and December 4th is a presidential election. It's our responsibility as citizens, and as young people for that matter, to come out on December 4th and go and cast our votes. If you don't cast your votes, you are denying yourself your fundamental human rights. It's your duty to go and vote. Please do not allow yourself to be deceived, intimidated, or allow yourself to be coerced or surrender your cards to anybody. Please use your card as your right and go and cast your vote on December 1st and ensure that it's done within the time frame, because the election period or the voting period ends by 5 o'clock. And we want every young person in this country with a voter card go to the poll and elect the person that you want to surrender your power and your will to for the coming 5 years.
Charges against a former Shell Africa employee, Edi Mass Jobe, in the case involving officials of the Gambia National Petroleum Company have been dropped. According to the Point newspaper, the Director of Public Prosecutions, S.H. Barkoon, on Thursday dropped charges against Mr. Jobe and brought more charges against 9 others in the Gambia National Petroleum Company case before Justice Utaba of the Special Criminal Court in Banjul. They were charged for economic crimes, conspiracy to commit felony, neglect of official duty, disobedience of statutory duty, and destroying evidence. State prosecutors allege that the accused persons contributed to the loss of $12 million of taxpayers' money. The trial judge said that the application to amend and to drop charges against Mr. Jobe was granted, and the principal registrar was ordered to release his documents, and all obligations in the bail bond were revoked. He, therefore, discharged him accordingly. The case is expected to resume on the 24th of October for the trial against the remaining accused persons to continue. Now, established in 1999, the University of The Gambia doesn't still look like a modern university and has no ranking amongst African universities. However, the government of The Gambia is still committed to have a resourceful university. Authorities in Banjul have signed a $53.46 million deal with an Indian construction firm, Shapoorji Pallonji International. to construct a state-of-the-art campus. According to the pro-government newspaper The Daily Observer, the new campus, when ready, is expected to house over 6,000 students with more postgraduate research and development programs to be introduced. The Gambia's Higher Education Minister, Dr. Abubakar Senghor, said government's decision to establish the University of the Gambia marks a significant era in the history of the country's tertiary education. That is all from me, Shura Ravindran. Have a good week. In the meantime, enjoy this song from Baba Mol Apula, legendary Senegalese singer.
Baba by the Baba koi umima ena yama kido. Boda yima sedu yakuba kam. Sedu aitat ha